We're back with another fun tutorial. Thomas is hard at work in the Army Painter studio in Skanderborg, Denmark. I'm here with you to narrate the progress. Today he's going to show you how to build an ice and snow themed piece of terrain for your science fiction gaming table. He's just making a stencil here with some graph paper. He's going to cut that out with a hobby knife here. So very carefully cut out that stencil. Stencils are great because they allow you to repeat the shapes as you need when you're creating a theme across a set of terrain for your gaming table. Once he's cut out the stencil, he's just going to apply it to some of our XPS foam board, and with a graphite pencil he's going to trace out the design just like so. Once he has both of his archways completely traced in, he's going to take our steel ruler and scenery knife and he's going to cut the foam board into the more rough shapes that he wants to start building out this piece of terrain. Now with the hot wire foam cutter, he is very carefully going to cut out the arched doorways here. He's just very gently moving that hot wire foam cutter and using those pencil marks as a guideline to create a nice, clean, and smooth cut in the XPS foam. If you've never used a hot wire foam cutter before, it really makes terrain building simple and super fun. I can't explain just how fun it is to really go wild with the hot wire foam cutter when you're making your terrain features. Now that we have the basic shapes figured out, we're going to use our hot wire foam cutter to begin cutting out some rubbled and ruined effects on our foam pieces like so. Just very carefully cut some non-uniform lines and shapes to really give it a true and realistic rubbled appearance. Now Thomas is going to map out just how tall he wants this piece to be, and then he's going to cut both sides to be a perfect match. And now it's time to cut out the platform for this terrain piece. We're just going to cut at a nice 90-degree right angle like so. And Thomas is going to dry fit the two walls of the building that he previously cut out together. We haven't yet adhered these together. And he's going to mark out how he wants the base, the platform for this terrain piece to be. Now we're just going to turn the piece around and we're going to utilize the negative space that we have from the first cut to create the top portion, the top level of this ruined piece. Go ahead and make a rough cut with your scenery knife like so. And then using your hot wire foam cutter, you can go ahead and cut out those jagged and organic looking shapes into the platform and then again the top level of this terrain feature. Now what Thomas is doing is that he is using the ruined walls to just mark out the dimensions and the shapes of them to create a second story wall on top of the first level. And he's going to cut them out very simply with the hot wire foam cutter. As always, we recommend that you sand the surface of the XPS foam. This not only gives it a nice texture and a uniform texture across, it allows paint to adhere to it a little bit better. And with an old brick or stone, go ahead and press the stone into the surface. This replicates the surface texture onto the foam for a very simple and effective appearance. Then you can go ahead and rough up the edges just a little bit more with the hot wire foam cutter to give it a truly rubbled and worn appearance. Now it's time to assemble your walls together. Just taking a bit of your XPS foam sculpting glue, go ahead and apply it to the edges, and we're going to fasten the walls together first. You can see that Thomas is going to go ahead and apply that glue to the bottom already, so that way it makes it really easy. Once he has the two walls fit together like so, just very carefully, you want to make sure that they're perfectly in line, as perfect as you can get it, and then go ahead and fasten it to the base. Then you can apply the glue to the top and begin building up the layers like so. Once you have the top level secure, go ahead and begin mounting the upper level walls. I think midway through production of this piece of terrain, Thomas realized that he wanted to make the piece a little bit bigger. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to build a slightly larger platform for the piece to sit on top of. So he's going to follow the same principles that we applied before. He's going to cut some jagged edges. He's going to sand the foam. He's going to press in that brick into this new platform piece like so. And then we're going to mount the actual piece of And then we'll go ahead and add the actual building on top, along with some additional ruin and rubble. And here you can see what the building is starting to look like. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take some more of our XPS foam sculpting glue, and we're going to apply this to the building along the edges like so. and we're going to apply it to the base. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply some additional texture. Once we get the glue on, we're going to take an old brush and we're just going to move the glue around. We're going to use it to fill some gaps in the corners, like you see Thomas, he's just working that into the corners like so, and also apply it in different areas across the base so that we can begin adding some of our scenery sand. Simply pour the scenery sand on top like so. Don't worry, this step is a bit messy, but you can save any of the excess scenery sand, put it back in the jar, and use it for later projects. You're going to let that scenery sand and all the glue to dry and set up. Make sure that the building is nice and secure, and then we're going to head outside to a well-ventilated area. We're going to give our terrain primer a nice good shake before applying a nice smooth coat over top. Now, this Snow and Tundra terrain primer is a 100% match to Gorgon Hide from our War Paints range, which is a nice vibrant and light blue. It's a very nice icy blue. So one thing you're going to want to be careful about is making sure that you do get good solid coverage over top of that white foam. And now it's time to begin working in the layers of effects on this terrain piece. Now we have a bit of wolf gray on our palette. We've thinned it down with a bit of water, and we're going to apply this into the shadows and recesses, almost like a wash, but we are going to work its way over the flatter areas as well. What we're doing is we're building up layers and texture with color. Continuing with the layered theme, we're going to add our next layer, and this we're using Quick Shade Blue Tone. You can see Thomas isn't applying this like you would traditionally apply a wash to a model. He's stippling this and feathering this into the shadows and the recessed areas across this piece of terrain. Now we have a bit of fog gray from the Army Painter War Paints range, and we're going to work up the next level. So we went very bright and then we've darkened it down. Now we're starting to bring those colors back up again, layering these different hues and shades for a really natural icy effect. Now if you remember, our Snow and Tundra terrain primer is a 100% color match to Gorgon Hide. So we're going to grab some of the Gorgon Hide from our War Paints range and we're going to dry brush this across the raised areas of the model. You can see how after we've added the shadows and the darker tones, which really brings the blueness out of the ice theme, when we apply the Gorgon Hide over top, it really does a good job of giving off that icy effect by picking out those highlights. Now here's a really cool trick. Thomas has grabbed Fairy Dust from our Metallics Colors range. Now this is a pigmentless metallic paint. So he's going to apply this all over in a dry brush and slightly overbrushed fashion, and the metallic pigments are really going to give some reflectivity to the paint, really giving it a nice icy look. You can just see how the light bounces around off the surface of this piece of terrain thanks to that Fairy Dust metallic effects paint. Now we're going to apply some tufts to the base. Tufts are a great way to add some foliage very simply because you just pull them off of their sheet like you see Thomas doing here with a pair of tweezers, dip them into some of your PVA glue and apply them where you'd like to have them on your piece of terrain. Of course, Thomas is using frozen tufts because this is a Snow and Tundra themed piece of terrain for your sci-fi wargaming table. So go ahead, we like to apply different layers of them, sometimes larger ones next to small ones, and we like to put them in slightly random areas across the terrain. Now Thomas is just going to begin stippling on some of the PVA glue with an old dry brush to the top portions and the raised portions of this piece of terrain because we're going to be adding some more snow effects. So very carefully, he's just going to add this, like I said, on the top portion and on some wider open spaces on this piece of terrain. Once he's applied the PVA glue, he is going to pour over our battlefield snow flock all over top before the glue has dried. That's very important here, and this is going to add just another texture, another level of realism to our terrain piece to really give off that Snow and Tundra theme. When you're finished applying the snow flock, go ahead and remove the excess, and you can scrape it back into the jar and keep it for later projects. And there you have it. In just a few simple steps, you saw how easy it can be to build a Snow and Tundra themed ruin for your wargaming table using the GameMaster products, especially the GameMaster terrain primers. Whether it's historical gaming, science fiction, or fantasy, GameMaster has something for you. Check it out at thearmypainter.com.